Now, can I be heard? This is a question. I do not know. Hello, everyone. I'm Mickey Wakefield. I heard there were some issues with um, my mic. I've switched to a headset in the hopes that funny noise was a bunch of interference. I don't know if I can be heard. If you could please mention in the chat if you can hear me. Superpot, you can hear me. How is the overall sound quality? Is it okay? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll be ready to go in about 3 minutes. Um, let's do this. I had all this set up, so might as well use it. We'll be beginning with Fusion 360 Basics, Part 1, because I'm going to basically deal with concept design first. This is my first live stream using OBS and Facebook, so I thank you for your patience, making sure that works out well. If you can hear me, of which I'm not entirely certain, we will beginning in just a few moments. I'm kind of waiting for everybody to get here. I don't know if people are having trouble getting in or if they just don't know about this or whatever. I figure giving everybody a bit of time to get set up is not such a bad thing. There we go. Hey everybody, my name is Mickey Wakefield. I am the Fusion 360 Community Manager worldwide. Um, I've been working with Fusion 360 since, well, even before we put it out on the market. And today, this is my first Facebook live stream. I've done lots of live streams using other platforms, but I've never used OBS or Facebook. And so I'm a bit nervous about whether or not it's all going to work. OBS is a very flexible and also quite complicated software. But if there are any hiccups, I do appreciate your patience with me, and we'll get through it. And I'm sure that if this is appreciated by the community, that I will do more of them. And for today, I have chosen to Let me see if I can share my Fusion with you. I believe that looks good. Let me check in the stream. I can see if it will then update and show Fusion. Give me just a moment. Just waiting to see if you can see it, because there's a slight delay between what I do and say and what you see on your screen. So it does look like I'm showing my Fusion. That is a good thing. Looks like I could trust this software after all. And for today's example, I might as well go ahead and open up a finished example so I can show you what we're going to be working on together today. And this is my Fusion. Perhaps you know it. I hope you love it. We're going to be doing a small little table lamp of somewhat questionable aesthetic, depending on whether or not you like this or not. And I hope that you will be able to follow along and actually click with me. It will be a little bit difficult, I think, to interact because the only option I have for interaction with you is through the chat. And so we'll see how this goes and try it out. Now, why did I choose a table lamp like this? Well, to be honest, a number of years ago, I was thinking about what could I do as a very basic Fusion primer, and I thought about all sorts of things. And I've been in this industry for about 25 years, and for some odd reason, I have worked with other CAD companies and other CAD softwares. For some odd reason, all of the initial tutorials were always small little desk lamps that were not really very attractive most of the time. But after a lot of soul searching, I thought, well, why reinvent the wheel? So I made a little desk lamp as well. And this actually is a multi-part course that I've given many, many times, both live, and I actually have videos on YouTube as well showing how to make this lamp, going all the way from concept design to finished manufacturing design. So let's begin together. Now, first off, in the interest of checking everything out, I will check the chat again. I would like to know if you are able to hear me. Can you hear me? I'm going to wait for your response in the chat. And my information says that there are only 3 of you, so if you're waiting on everybody else to answer, please do not. Thank you, Superbot. You are very helpful today. I do appreciate it. Good. So at least one person can hear me. I shall continue. So if you're following along, and I will recommend you to try, here's what you can do. The method I'm going to show you for how to use Fusion is typical. It is not the only one, but it is sort of a very basic parametric design workflow that is one of the ways that Fusion works and one of the ways Fusion works best. This is not to say that this is the only way Fusion will work, and there are other workflows that are equally valid, but if this is a beginner's course, we're going to start someplace. And one of the things we do quite often with Fusion is that we use a picture like this one. I'll show it to you. A picture, something like this one, as a kind of outline for what we want to design in the end. And you can actually see I did this one by hand at some point, and I put it into Fusion. I used it as the basis of my design. We're going to do something very similar. So I am going to make a new design. You should have Fusion open, and you should have here up at the top Untitled, and you will have a blank screen. There's going to be nothing on it. And I want to give you this picture so that you can work on this lamp with me together. Now you can see I have a picture here available, but it is in my project folder. I have a Fusion 360 Basics project, and in this project folder I have a PNG file. That's an image file out of Photoshop that I used. And I can invite you to this. Of course, I could invite each and every one of you to this, and then you could actually have access to this data. But I don't want you fooling around with my project, mate. I really don't. So I'm going to give you this in a different way. What a lot of people don't know about Fusion is not only can you look at your projects here, you also have an alternate view on the web. So let me go into the web by clicking this button right there. This button will open up your default browser, which honestly, it should either be Firefox or Chrome with Fusion because Fusion likes those. And in the background, my Fusion, my Chrome has popped open and there is a Fusion team. I do not believe that you see this, so I will try to change my window capture and see if I can give you access to that. That looks like it might be about right. Now, I'm going to assume that everything is working great. If it is not working great and you cannot see my Google Chrome, then you should mention it in the chat and I will see it in a moment or two. All right. So this is the same data that we had in our Fusion before. There is no difference between this data and the data that is shown on the left side of your screen in Fusion. This is just an alternate way of looking at it. And you can look at all your data here. And it's kind of neat. You can turn on thumbnail views so you can actually see stuff. That's quite nice. And it's a nice interface. By the way, this is quite useful because anyone can use this, even if you're not a Fusion user. If I was making this lamp for my mother-in-law, she's not a Fusion user, I could show her this lamp, this background image, or even the finished part by sending her to this website, and she would be able to look at all this stuff. There's also a viewer in here so she can look at 3D models and all this good stuff. What a lot of people don't know, however, is that if you look up here at the top of this, there's also a thing called Wiki Pages. And I created a couple of Wiki Pages for my project because I knew that I'd be doing this for a number of years and I'd be doing it over and over and again. And one of those Wiki Pages was images and videos to recreate. Now, you don't need to know this, but I wanted to show it to you. And here's the thing. This is the link which you need to now enter into your Google Chrome, this link here, and it will take you to this picture on Imgur, and you can right-click that and download it. So I will open this in a new tab so that you don't have to see that, and you can keep tabs of this. And once you go there, I will go back to this link, don't worry. Once you go there, you will see a picture and you will be able to right mouse button that and you will be able to save image as. When you save that image, you should save it somewhere on your computer that you will be able to find it again. That is the only thing that is important, that you will be able to find it again, because very shortly we will be looking for that picture and we will be inserting it into our Fusion background. So let me go back to images and videos to recreate. And this is the shortcut. This is a really, really bad shortcut link. http://autodesk.sk/crazy_legs_side view. That is actually awful. But of course, I can just click on it, so it's not really my problem. It's kind of your problem. I hope you've been able to enter that into your Google Chrome and get that photo. I will come back to it again. I do want to go and check on the stream feed and see how that is going, and also to see that you are somewhat following along. If you would like, you could give me a feedback in your chat. It occurs to me that I could also just put this link in the chat. That is infinitely more helpful, I believe. And so in the chat, you have a link directly to that picture now. Seeing as you can get that out of the chat window now, I will return to my Fusion screen and we will begin the work in earnest. So let's see if I believe I can pop out the chat. Thank you, Superpot. You are really quite the hero today. I do appreciate it. Really, I do. I'm not being sarcastic, not even a bit. Let me see if I can put that on top. That is quite nice. It's a bit large, that chat window, but I think I can deal with it. Great. So I've closed my data panel here on the left, closed that, and I have all this expanse to use. Now, for those of you that have never seen Fusion before, that may be one or two of you, who knows, just keep in mind that we have toolbars across the top, and we have shortcuts here. These pictures are all little shortcuts, but really each one of these pull-down menus under Create has a large number of commands that are associated with the Create geometry pull-down. And some of these, only some of these, have been added to the shortcuts at the top. So you'll notice that this one right here, Extrude, this is an extrude, but it is also at the same time here as extrude. And if you're a keyboard shortcut sort of person, there is also E as a keyboard shortcut for extrude. All this is editable. You could always take extrude off of your shortcuts. You could also add other ones, but that's more advanced stuff and we will forget about that for now. Also, there is another way to access most of these commands, and that is with the right mouse button on your mouse. You have context-sensitive commands, so a lot of these commands are available when you click on the right mouse button as well. For the sake of consistency today, I will attempt to always just use the pull-down menus because we want this to be a straight shot, an easy thing for somebody who's just starting out. One of the first things we're going to do is we're going to use that picture we just downloaded. And to do that, we're going to use the Insert pull-down menu. In the Insert pull-down menu, there is a command called Canvas. That command is not called Insert. A lot of people think it is because it's got Insert written underneath it, because Canvas is one of these ones that we actually have in the shortcut. But for now, we're going to use it in the pull-down. It makes no difference. And we're going to say we're going to add a canvas to our Fusion. You'll see a pop-up turn up, and that pop-up will ask you, well, what sort of picture would you like to add onto your canvas? And this is where the picture we just downloaded off the internet will come in handy. Normally, you could take it out of one of your projects, as I said, but since you don't have it in a project, you'll say insert it from my computer. And this is the point where you go through and you actually find that photo or that picture that you just downloaded off the internet and you grab it. All right. Now I wanted that pop-up chat to stay up top. Looks like we're doing okay so far. I will check back in a moment or two. Now, let's redo that again, just because I know almost always somebody didn't get it. So I just canceled out. If you're still in it, don't worry about it. Go to Insert, Canvas. It will ask you, what do you want to insert? What kind of picture? You will say Insert from my computer. And you will wander to that spot on your computer where you downloaded that file. Here, I just did it in my Downloads folder. And I will open that picture. You will not immediately see anything. You will see a pop-up window over here with some information about what kind of image you're putting in. That's the image name there. And you will see a blue highlighted area called Select. This blue highlighting is Fusion's way of telling you this is what it wants from you. It wants to know what face this canvas is going to be put onto. Because you have no geometry in your graphics view, Fusion has automatically turned on the visibility of the three base planes. This is the XY plane, the YZ plane, and the XZ plane, right? These are the three orthogonal planes that we generally associate with front and back, top and bottom, left and right. And so it turns these on, and these are giving you as options where you can place this canvas. And since I have a side view of my lamp that I would like to make, I will actually go on the right. You'll see over here the view cube. It kind of gives you some directions, and this is a help for navigation. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But I can click on this here, and that will highlight that. And this means the computer is going to put this canvas on that plane. And you'll see this funny thing often in Fusion. It is a translational command. We call it a gizmo. And the reason we call it a gizmo is because 20 years ago in 3D Studio Max, they created this thing and they called it a gizmo there. It's sort of a silly name, but for the sake of consistency, I'm going to call it a gizmo as well. And if you zoom in very closely, and I zoom in using my middle mouse wheel, zoom in and out, you will always zoom towards your mouse. So if you're zooming in a funny place, put your mouse on what you want to zoom to and roll the mouse towards yourself. This is also a setting in Fusion. You can change all this stuff, but this is sort of the defaults. You can zoom in and out this way. In this way, the zoom works as a zoom, but it also works as a pan, because if I want to move over here, I want to look over something here, I will zoom out, move my mouse over here, and zoom back in. And I will be zooming into my mouse. I can also zoom back out, and I can then move my mouse to the area that I'm interested in and then zoom back in. Also, if you're interested in moving around other ways, you can click on the view cube here in the top right. You can just click once on each face, and it will turn instantly to that face you're looking at. You can even click on the corners and the edges, and it will have those. If you get lost completely, just go home, and it will take you back to an isometric view as standard. And if you have nothing else on your screen, you can't find anything, you're lost completely out in space, down here at the bottom, you have an option. Down here, if you pull down on this pull down right here, you will see there's an option called Fit. And this will fit all the geometry that is in your model on your screen. And if you've lost everything, that's usually a good plan. As there is always one or two who have this issue, I will describe it again. If you see nothing, go here to Fit, or well, you won't see a fit. You'll actually, by default, you'll see Zoom window down here on this little magnifying glass. And you'll have this little button right here. You'll be able to say Fit, and it will fit your entire geometry on your screen so that you can generally see something and find your position again. Now, there is nothing you really need to do with this picture except, I'm going to click on right. I made a mistake, so I'm going to click on Fit. There's nothing you need to do with this picture for now, except you'll need to set your canvas opacity. Your canvas opacity will be 100%, which means you will not be able to see anything that is behind this picture. That is a little bit odd. If you look at the webcam, I believe you can see my face right now. If you have a picture here, well, in your case there, and you're modeling something back here, and your canvas is not a little bit see-through, well, you won't be able to see the thing that you're modeling. So we want to make the canvas a bit see-through, and so I usually make it just under 50%. In the same way, if I am modeling something in front of my picture, I won't be able to see the picture. And so there is a nice little option here called Display Through, and you'll want to select that as well, because this Select Through button will use the magic of 3D CAD to allow this picture behind the object that you're designing to sort of shine through that CAD model. If you set this once, you will never have to change it again, because Fusion is in this case persistent, so it will sort of stay this way. And this is the way I always use it, and I do recommend it. All this other stuff is important, but we won't use it for now. So just click OK, and you should be able to see a picture very similar to what I have here. Now, I will give you just a moment or two in the chat to see if you were able to get that done. And please give me a little bit of feedback. So let me see if I can look at that chat button. I'm going to assume at this point that everyone is okay. So I will continue. Now, if we have this as a background, there is one problem with this background. I never told you how big this picture is. This picture might be an Amazon thumbnail, so it might be tiny, or it might be actually absolutely ginormous. You don't really know. And for this reason, Fusion has a very nice functionality, and you will see it here under the Canvases folder. By the way, this Canvases folder only turned up after we inserted this canvas, and we'll see behavior like this very soon again in many other areas. So all the canvases that we have, in this particular case we only have one, are located underneath the canvases, and you can open up all these folders by these funny little arrows, and you can turn them on and off. You can make, well, not turn them on and off, you can make them visible or invisible by hitting the eyeball right here, right? The eye. You can turn it on and off. This doesn't mean you delete anything, it just makes it visible or invisible. You can do that for all canvases, or you can do it for each individual canvas. In this particular case, there is no difference between the two. We only have one. There is, believe it or not, I think there's a limit of 99 canvases or something like that, but I've never even come close. And sometimes it is quite handy to have multiple canvases because you can do a front view, a side view, a top view, and things like this. For complicated geometries, this can be quite nice. But we have that canvas, but we don't know how big it is. Now, if you go to this canvas and you right mouse click it, you will see a command called Calibrate. And this Calibrate command, if you pay attention now, will allow me to calibrate this picture. So if I click it, and don't worry, I will do this several times, you can click any 2 points on that picture, the first point, and you'll notice if I hold my mouse still for just a moment, those tooltips will show up in this graphic area, and it will tell you what it wants from me. So if I don't know what I'm doing, I can always pay attention to those. Pick the second point on the canvas plane. Now there is no help, there's no visual help, so you kind of got to eyeball this really closely, and I want to get that the top to bottom height. And you can see it's a little bit off. It's not entirely straight, but this is close enough for government work. Fusion is a mechanical design tool, but it is also a design tool. And designers quite like usually working like in a freehand mode. So, you know, it is what it is. And right now, the distance between these 2 points, this linear distance, is 6.46 and something millimeters. So this is tiny. It's not a very big lamp. So we do need to make some decisions about how big this lamp should be overall. And I decided a long time ago, it's going to be pretty big. I'm going to make it 50, not millimeters, centimeters. Now I could just as easily put in 500. That's not a problem. I could even put in, I don't know, something like, it'll be something like 10 inches or whatever. I could put 10 IN for inches. But, you know, if you just put 50 centimeters, cm for centimeters, Fusion will calculate in the background automatically and convert that into millimeters. You can always change the units in Fusion generally if you so wish, but if you have something that's not in one of your system units, just add the units and Fusion will convert. So when I hit that button, it will look like everything has disappeared. It has not disappeared. The thing is, this thing was so small that when I expanded it and made it very large, I'm now looking at a white part of the screen. So if I take my middle mouse button again and just zoom out or use the fit button, you'll see nothing really changed. But this thing is now quite large. If I go back, I can prove it to you. If I go back and do the calibrate thing again, I won't be able to get it exactly the same, but if you get real close, you'll see it's about 500 millimeters now. So assuming that that is as big as I want my lamp to be, I can now use this lamp as a background upon which I can sketch and create my geometry. This is extremely effective, and it's used an awful lot by Fusion users. Now, if you didn't get that, don't worry about it. I'm going to press the escape key to get out of that command, and I will show you something else that you need to learn and need to use quite a bit in Fusion right now. Because every one of us makes mistakes, me more than anyone, and if I don't like what I just did, I can just use the undo button right up here. I have an undo and I have a redo. And so if I click the undo button, I have undone my calibration. Undo the calibrate. I can even go all the way back, if I so choose, to undo everything. But I don't want to do that. I do want to have here my canvas turning up. And you'll notice that when I took it out, the canvases aren't there. And then I edit it with a redo canvas, and then it's in there. All right? So let's talk about this calibration thing again in case you didn't get it. Let's fit the screen. There's the picture. Open up the canvases. In the canvases, you'll see that canvas that we're dealing with. You can right-click it, and you can say Calibrate. You'll pick a first point at the top of the lamp, and pick roughly in a line at the feet of the lamp, a second point, and you will tell the system that you would like that to be 50 cm, 50 centimeters high. It will appear to disappear, but all it's really done is scaled up quite large. So the result, you'll go down here to fit and be able to fit that back onto your screen. And you can believe me, that thing is truly 50 centimeters high, i.e. 500 millimeters. And that is what I'm calling the right size for my lamp. And it's what we're going to use as our background. Here again, I will wait just one moment to make sure that everyone was able to follow that. I kind of missed you where you set the opacity of the picture. All right, SuperPot, you've been helping me out a lot, so I'll help you out a lot. All right? And anybody else that's got any trouble, let me know. SuperPot, if you missed the opacity, that's not a problem. Just like everything else in Fusion, you can always edit everything you've done after the fact. This canvas is here, and not only can I right mouse button and calibrate it, I can also use the command to edit it. By the way, you can edit it by right-clicking on it and saying Edit Canvas, or you can even go down here in the timeline, and we'll be talking about this again. This canvas and this canvas are exactly the same thing. It's the same thing in two different places. You can also right-click it here, and you can say Edit Feature there, or you can do the same thing up here, or if you're so inclined, you can even just double-click on this, and you will get back into that Edit Feature command. This looks just as before, and if you miss that opacity, you'll have something that looks like this, and you might not even have this display through business here. So all you have to do now is change your opacity down to something below 50%, and then you'll also be able to say display through, and this will be okay. And all those renderable stuff, all that other stuff, it's for another day. It's fine for now. And after you're done with that, you can just say okay. All right? Go back to the chat, see if there's any other questions in there. I hope that helped you, SuperPot. You can tell me later. All right. Give you some time to catch your breath, and this is where it starts going on a little bit quicker. Trust me, at the beginning of all these, it seems like it just takes forever to describe even the most basic stuff. But Fusion is like most CAD systems. It has a consistent workflow. And so everything you're learning now pretty much applies to everything else you're going to do later. So at the beginning, it's very, very slow. And later on, you'll see we're going to be picking up speed very quickly. It'll take us 85 to 90% of the time to do about 20% of the work. And then once you've got the workflow down, you'll knock this lamp out in no time flat. By the way, just so you know, I expect this to take about an hour and a half in general. But once you know how to do this, you can literally design this lamp in 2 minutes. And if you don't believe me, look at my YouTube channel. I do it. It's pretty easy, and you'll be able to as well. So now that we've got a background picture, we are going to begin creating the core, the basis of our geometry. And there are several ways to do this, but the most common in parametric CAD systems is to create a two-dimensional sketch. We generally do this because two-dimensional sketches give us relationships and they give us the general form of things. And then we use those two-dimensional sketches to create 3D geometry in a secondary step. That is the way most of the time we work. It is not the only way we work, but since it is the basic way of working, it's what I'll show today. So what we're going to create is sort of a stick figure of our lamp. If you're sitting at Zorba's House of Greek Gyros with your mother-in-law and you want to describe to her the lamp she's going to be getting from you for her birthday, you might, on the back of a napkin, quickly sketch a kind of lamp like this, and you would do it through a sort of stick figure arrangement, and that is all we're going to do here as well. We shall begin. Similar to the way that we inserted a canvas, we are now going to create a sketch. That is under the Create pull-down menu. There is a command here called Create Sketch. It is also available here, naturally. But Create Sketch. Similar to what the canvas did before, your tooltip will tell you, if you keep your mouse still for just long enough, select a plane or planar face. A sketch is generally assumed to be a 2D sketch. This does not have to be the case in Fusion. We do have 3D sketches, but let's forget about that for now. It is not basic stuff. So we're going to be doing 2D sketches today, and as a result, we need a two-dimensional plane on which to sketch. Since we do not have any geometry, all we have is a picture, the system again turns on the base. If I hold my mouse button on the view cube and pull it, I can twist, right? And it turns on these, and it offers me these as a surface on which to sketch. In the same way that I did with my canvas, I am going to use that middle plane here, looking from the side. I'm going to click on that. Just click on it once. Don't hold the button too long or you'll get that multi-select thing that I just had turn up there. And now I am sketching on this plane. Some of you may have some other things going on here with a funny grid or all kinds of stuff like this. So let's just talk about that really quickly. What you will notice is that your toolbar across the top has changed. You now have a sketch palette or sketching commands. One thing you'll notice is that you'll have a green check mark here to say Finish Sketch. This is your clue that you are in the sketching environment. And you also have here on the right side your sketch palette. If you don't see it, then I suggest checking your other right side. It may be over there. That's a joke, people. All right. Now, by default, your 3D sketch is usually on. That's a little bit annoying these days. Turn that off. You will see a funny little thing in the middle here. Just turn the 3D sketch off. When you need it, it is nice to have. It is not needed now. The rest you can leave. There are some other settings you might want to think about here as well. Grids and snaps down here at the bottom. You want to turn off incremental move. For those of you that have not been using Fusion for a very long time, this incremental move is for some reason default. You want to turn it off, and you want to turn off the grid, all right, if you can. But the incremental move is the most important part. Turn that off, all right? Now, I have made a mistake, as is so often. I noticed that my origin is here in the middle of space, and that is not at all what I want. But don't worry, we don't have to worry about that. I can finish my sketch, and I can actually go down here and I can delete this sketch. All right. What I want to do, so delete that sketch. Let's look at that from the right side again. That was, by the way, not planned, but I do it all the time, and it won't be any different for you when you're starting out. What I want is I want to make sure that my origin is someplace that's useful to me. It's not really important, but it's kind of a nice thing to have because you can use that origin point to reference dimensions and all sorts of things. And if it's out here in the middle of space, I can't measure anything with it. I can't do anything with it. To see where it is, I can go over here with my eyeball and turn on my origin. And that will not only turn on my origin, but if I pop this open, you can see that there's the origin, there are the X, Y, and Z axes, and I also have those planes. So I'm just going to leave those on for now. And what I want is I want this point, the origin, to be someplace reasonable. And I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, I can't move my origin. The origin is where it is. But what I can do is I can move my canvas relative to this. And SuperPot, you have some experience with this now. All you have to do is right mouse click on this canvas, and you can say Edit Canvas. And now for the first time, we're going to play with this stuff. Although we're not going to edit anything directly here, we can now use the gizmo to place this canvas with respect to this origin. And the gizmo will allow you to pull your picture left and right, up and down. Don't mess with these. Don't mess with them because they will scale your picture. If you click on these, they will scale it and they will change the size of your picture, and that is specifically not what we want, because if you scaled it in this direction, it will now be taller than the 500 millimeters that we wanted. So don't mess with these. These are just stretching it, right? But this one's quite nice. This allows you to move it in the plane. And so if I move it in the plane and I kind of set it on the imaginary floor with that central point sort of right between, right at that connection point right there where everything comes together. That is a sensible point for my origin, because this is sort of like a fake ground. Although you have to imagine, CAD doesn't know anything about where a ground is, where a tabletop is, or anything like this. So this is all just imaginary, but it is kind of useful for me. So it's going to come in handy later. And so I'm quite pleased with that. If you're not exactly sure about the position, you can zoom in with your middle mouse button and you can try to get it really nice and sharp. But, you know, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good today. And once you're happy with this placement, more or less, you can say, okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back to the chat and see if everybody's freaking out here. Got it. Am I correct in assuming Fusion 360 calls layers canvases? No, you are not, SuperPot. You're not correct in that. Layers are a completely different concept. Comes out of AutoCAD. We don't have layers in Fusion. Everything is there in one layer, if you so like. And we don't turn layers on and off, we turn entities on and off. We can turn sketches on and off, we can turn construction geometries on and off. We can even turn later bodies and components on and off, at least in their visibility, but we don't have the concept of layers in general. There is actually one exception, but let's not get into that now. All right? That's going to be a change for you if you're coming from, if you're talking about layers, you're obviously coming from the AutoCAD world. And it's a bit different, but don't worry, you'll get it. Now back to Fusion. Now, so we've now got this thing placed, and if you're so inclined, you can fit it again so that I can see the entire picture. And I'm going to begin sketching as I wanted to before. Now this is good practice. How did we sketch? We said, let's create a sketch. Create sketch. It's going to ask you with the pop-up window or the tooltip, select a plane or planar face. This one is quite nice. Let's take it, and it will pop onto that. It will zoom onto that. It will kind of position that. That is also a setting in Fusion. You can turn on or turn off, but I'm going to leave it as is for now. And we're now looking normal to that plane, and we have our sketching environment here, and we have what's called the sketch palette here. All of you have turned off your 3D sketches, and I certainly hope you've turned off your incremental moves. All right? So, now, we will begin with the most basic of all sketching commands, and that is the line. Here is a line. Don't click it, but we can also use it, create line. Same thing. And here again, just like with the canvas, just like with the sketch plane, it will tell you what it wants if you just leave your mouse still long enough. And it's saying, place your first point. And you could place a number of first points, but together we're going to place a first point round about here. And I want to make sure that it is exactly in line with the Z axis. And to do this, I'm going to use a trick. If I move close to the origin, you'll see that eventually this thing will actually snap. It'll snap to that origin. And there's a little blue square, which men over 40 have a really difficult time seeing due to the gray-blue macular degeneration that we all get. But it's there. And once I snap to it, I don't want to click. I just want to move it and it'll snap. Once I move there, anytime I get in a line with that origin, it's behaving strangely for me right now. It will actually sort of snap to that line as well. Same thing will happen here. And that's quite handy because if I get in that line, then I can sort of move along here and I can pretty accurately hit the middle of that and click my mouse button once. Just click it once and then let go of it, take your finger off of it, and move it away. By the way, if some of you are out there in the Mac world and you're working on your touchpad, stop it. Stop it right now. Go steal some Windows user's 3-button mouse and use it. And for all of you that are going, no, 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 I am much, much faster with my touchpad. No, you are not. I have trained several thousand people on this software. You are not even close. You'll also mess your wrists up big time if you do this for 20 years on your touchpad. Go get a 3-button mouse. You'll be much happier. It's not just a Fusion thing. If you're going to be working professionally in visualization and CAD, you're going to need a 3-button mouse. It's really important. All right? So click it once, move it away, and you'll see it's creating a line for you. And there's actually some places for you to put some numbers in, but we're not going to put any numbers in. I'm going to roll out with my middle mouse button, and I'm going to kind of eyeball it because that's the purpose of having this canvas. And I'm going to eyeball it so that I'm in the middle of that, and I'm going to click it again. Just doesn't have to be perfect, y'all. Just click it once. And so I've got a little blue line there, and it's going to create another line. And so I'm going to actually take the system up on that suggestion and move it over here. And you'll see if I get close to perpendicular, you'll see a little blue rectangle turn up there as well. And that's going to let me know that it's a perpendicular corner, a 90-degree corner. And I can click and I can release again. Now I could keep creating lines till the donkeys come. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to either hit the check mark here, which is supposed to be nice and convenient, or sort of a hidden command that nobody knows about, or most people know about but never talk about, is you can always exit out of a command in Fusion by pressing the escape key. Unfortunately, you can't see that here in YouTube world, but I just press the escape key, and that means that I am out of the sketching, the creating line command. And so I had these 2 points, these 2 lines that I just created. Now, what's so special about these lines? Nothing. But I want to show you a few things that you need to know about how these line sketches work, right? First thing you'll need to know is that once you've created the escape key, I'm out of that. So I can still go by and I can still click on these things. And because they are blue, that means they are not fully defined. That means I am perfectly fine to move this stuff about. I can move it anywhere I want, right? There are some rules that are being kept perpendicular, right? So I can take this, but I can't not make it perpendicular to that. Unless, of course, I don't like that perpendicularity. I can click on that and I can hit the delete key, another hidden command. I have to hit the delete key, and now perpendicularity is not defined there. and then I can move that back and forth anywhere I want. You'll notice that if I get close to this, it'll tell me, oh, it's going to be horizontal. And now I'm stuck again at horizontal. If I don't like that, I can delete that as well, and I can do all that kind of stuff. Now, I was just showing you this, and I don't want to change this. I don't want to make this all. So I'm going to undo all this. I'm going to undo all this business until I get back to that nice picture that I had before. All right? And you should do the same. Now we're going to be defining a little bit more about this sketch. Actually giving it some dimensions and some additional constraints and relationships. One of the first ones we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this is actually always vertically in line with the origin. So hit that escape key. That is just to make sure that nothing is selected. And then you'll be able to go in and say, use these constraints. And there's a whole series of them, but one of the easy ones is horizontal and vertical. Horizontal and vertical are the same in Fusion because in a 3D CAD system, this is vertical. The minute I turn my view screen this way, that vertical just became a horizontal. So we actually have those as one command, and it will always snap to the closest. So in this particular case, I will say escape key to make sure nothing is selected, and I will say horizontal, vertical, and I will say U origin, or horizontal or vertical to that point right there. And you'll notice that nothing much changed, except for the fact if you zoom in a little closer, you'll be able to see there's a horizontal, vertical, and this is actually in a pair. So if I select the escape key again, and I select it, you'll see that they will match up in pairs. So I know that these two are actually horizontal or vertical to one another. And so I can see some relationships like that. That's quite good. You can try moving it about. You'll see that I can only move it in a line, but I want it to be a little bit more closely defined than all that. And so I am going to make a dimension between here and there. Here again, we're going to go create, sketch dimension, and I am going to click there and there. And I'm going to say that is going to be 130, just a nice round 130, something like that. All right. Now, I'm going to undo all of that on purpose because I want to redo it with you. All right. Get me back to my original situation. That looks pretty good. So let's go in and redo this. I'm going to hit the escape button. I am going to say we're going to do escape button to make sure nothing is selected, horizontal, vertical between this point and the origin, escape key to get out of that command, and then go and create a dimension, create sketch dimension between this point and this point here. And I'm going to make that 130. Now, if your lamp happens to be a slightly different size, and it looks more like 125 or 120 might be more suitable for you, work to your canvas. Remember that your canvas may be slightly different than mine because you might have placed it a little differently, you might have calibrated it a little differently, and today is not about getting it actually the same as mine. So you don't have to actually do 130 here. If yours is closer to 125 or 120 or 128.5, I don't care. Work to your canvas and make it nice, all right? One of the things you'll notice is that it still wants to create more dimensions for me. You can see that on my tooltip. I'm going to hit my escape key to get out of that, and I'm going to point out to you the fact that this little point right there just turned from being white or blue to black. And the reason for this is this black thing says it is fully constrained. It can now move in no direction whatsoever. It must be on this plane because we're sketching on this plane. It must be vertical to this origin, yeah, because we set that up. And I define the distance from that origin using the dimension. So as a result, this is fully constrained, and I can pull on it all I want, and that will not make any difference whatsoever. If I pull on this stuff, everything else will still move, but that won't. Let's undo that, make sure we're back to where we wanted to go. Now I'm going to go back into the chat and see if we're doing okay, guys. I'm going to give you just a moment. And while I'm waiting, you can notice I'm doing quite a bit of talking. While I'm waiting for you to chat, I will go get myself a drink of water. It will be about 20 seconds. Seeing as how my wife banned me from our communal office because she has a meeting and I am in the kitchen. So that's handy at this moment. COVID's not easy for anybody, least of all me. Still waiting. Just a moment. There is a bit of a lag. I'm working on it. See how that works. All right. Looks like everybody's doing okay. Let's continue on. And I told you this does speed up. It does, I promise. We're still sketching. We're still doing the same things. And what I can do now is I can define the length of this back edge. Let's go into Create, Dimension. And it's important now that you actually select this line to dimension. I'll show you why in just a moment. If we select this line, we can easily place this, and it depends on where we go. If we go over here, we'll get a dimension between those two endpoints like that. If we go over here someplace, we'll get a dimension between those two edge points like that. And what I want is I want to get it aligned. And usually it's just, you got to monkey with your mouse a bit and just find that spot. And if you just can't stand the way this looks, that's no problem. If you just drop that by pushing your mouse button, and I'm going to call that just straight up, I'm going to call it 260. Looks to be about right. If you cannot stand this placement, once you're done with that, you can hit the escape key, and I can just grab that. Now it's been set. Oh, well, that's not going to be very helpful to me either. I grabbed the wrong thing. I want to grab the dimension, and if I can't stand the way that it looked like that, I can just pull it out and put it someplace else. That before I grab the line by accident because they're quite close. So let's undo that again, and I will redo that with all of you. So escape button to make sure that nothing is pre-selected. That's something that I kind of do automatically without really thinking about it. And I'm going to create sketch dimension. I'm going to go grab that line, monkey with my mouse until I get not this, not that, but this aligned dimension. Place that. Here again, you're going to put your own dimensions in that fit to your lamp, and you know, perfection is the enemy of the good. All right, so we're going to put that there. I'm going to hit the escape key. I'm going to grab that again and then move it if you so desire. You don't have to. And you'll notice that this, just like everything else, you don't have to do this with me, but now I cannot pull that out. We're starting to get this thing more and more defined. So we're getting to a place, you know, we're getting closer to what we really want. So I'll undo that to get us back to where we started. And now I would like to find this angle. And this is where things start getting a little bit dicey. And this is where it's going to take some explanation from me. So let me show you what most people would try to do. They'll say create, and they'll see create sketch dimension. And they would grab this line right there. And they'd go grab this line down here, this one, this green one. They'll go grab it and they'll try to click on it and give an angular dimension between that. But you can grab all you want down here. Fusion ain't going to let you take it. And there is no way to grab it, right? Why is this? You can see this green line down here. It is your Y axis. Why couldn't you grab that and dimension to it? Well, in some other CAD systems, you can. They allow that. Autodesk in general doesn't allow this sort of thing in any of their CAD tools, and with good reason. When you create a dimension between this sketch entity and this y-axis, yeah, you are creating a relationship between these two items forever. And we believe at Autodesk it is best that you are always aware of the relationships you are creating. And as a result, we only allow you to create relationships between items within a sketch. And this is visible, but it is not in your sketch. It is a reference geometry outside of the sketch. If I want to have it, I must bring it into the sketch. This is sort of a special thing, and for a lot of people it is a big pain in the butt. But it is good for creating robust models that will update themselves correctly when you make changes later. All right? I could sing you a song about this. So how do I do this? How do I go about getting this into my sketch? And by the way, you don't have to just do this with the y-axis, the z-axis, or the x-axis, or any of these other things. You would have to do it with any other geometry in an assembly that you would want to reference. And this is a good thing. Here's how you do it. Create a projection, and you project geometry into your sketch. So I'll create a projection. And what geometry would I like to project? Well, I would like to project that XY plane or the y-axis, depending on how you'd like to see it. Doesn't really matter. It's basically the same thing. You can click on it here. You can click on it there. It makes no difference whatsoever. You can click on it. One is selected, and you hit OK, and you will see a very small, very faint purple line in there. Now, my personal belief is that this purple line should be much thicker and much larger. I don't know why we haven't made it much thicker and much larger, but that's the way it is. But now this element is actually in your sketch. And now I can hit the escape key and I can say create sketch dimension, this back edge, or that back line, and this line. And when I click those two in succession, I can then create a angular measurement, and I could say that looks to me like it is 68 degrees. Bam. You'll notice that when I did this, just about everything in the sketch turned black except for that one white point. If I hit my escape key, you can see that everything else is stuck, but that can still move in and out. No problem. Now that is quite a lot to handle, so let me undo that again and let you follow along a second time with me. Let's take rid of that projection and look at it again. If you've lost yourself, just go into fit, make sure you're looking at everything head on. Now, again, we need to have elements in the sketch to be able to reference them. So we need to get this y-axis into the sketch by projecting it. This happens through create, projection include, project. And what are we going to project? We're going to project this down here. If you so prefer, you can do this up here in the menu. That's also quite a nice way to work sometimes. Click on the Y. You will see here that you will have one geometry selected. You can hit OK, and you will see somewhere down here a very faint purple line. This is also a setting what color that should be and all that sort of stuff, but default is purple. And you have now projected that into your sketch. As a result, you can then use it as a reference for a dimension. And we will do this by saying create sketch dimension, this line, and this line. And then you just have to move your mouse someplace else and place it. And then you have to decide what that angle really should be. I'm going to make it a nice round 68 degrees, and then everything should pretty much turn black. Now, that's quite a lot. I will also go back into the chat and look at this again, make sure that everything's okay. So far, so good. Now, we are making progress. We have a black line here, everything black lines here. So we can continue on with the rest of our two-dimensional sketch. And I will press the escape key and I will create another line. Just like before, pull down menu, create line. And this time, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to eyeball it. I'm going to try to grab this corner. I'm going to punch once on my mouse there. I'm going to go down to this corner here, and here again, don't freak out because you can move these things later. I showed you that earlier. So just click on there, get over here, get this just about right. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you can click over there, and then you can go up here and you can click on that. And here's where things get good. Once you get close to this over here, you'll see that it snaps. And you want it to snap. It must snap, as a matter of fact. It must snap to that point right there. And when you do, pay attention closely to this color in this area here. When you do, you'll notice the color changes oh so subtly. Also quite difficult to see sometimes, but especially with the canvas behind it. But I can turn off my canvas. I can show it to you. Turn off my canvas using the eyeball. And you can see that this shape now has a color associated with it, this faint blue color. This is not telling you that we have a plane. What this is information from the system telling you that this is a closed contour. And this is of immense importance in other downstream operations. If you can imagine, if I were now to tell the computer to draw this shape out, this trapezoidal shape out in a linear fashion into or out of the screen, we would get a three-dimensional volume, sort of a cubish kind of shape, yeah? If I did not have a closed volume, I will simulate this. This is wrong, by the way. You would have something like this. If we got anything at all, I would get sort of a shape like a piece of sheet metal that was pulled out into the screen or away from the screen. This is not what we want at all. What we definitely want is a closed volume, and they should actually snap together, and you can see that happen. So if you've turned off your canvas like I did, turn it back on so we can see it. That's fine. You just want to see that color. And when you move your mouse over it, you can see it quite clearly. This is the highlight, pre-highlight. All right. Now here again, we're going to use some dimensions and some relationships to make sure that things fit. So I'm going to hit the escape key. And one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this point and this line, they should be coincident. So I'm going to hit the escape key that makes make sure I have nothing selected, and I can say let's make coincident this line and this point. And you'll notice now that this whole line just shifted over slightly to meet that point, and these are now coincident, and they will always be so. That is good. Escape button. The next thing I might want to do is I might want to make sure that the shape is symmetrical. Obviously, it is a symmetrical shape in every way. So I'm going to create a line, and I am going to go from the middle of this, and if I move my mouse slowly over this line, you eventually see a little triangle appear. This is the midpoint of this line. And once I get there, I'm going to click with my left mouse button, and I will now be at the midpoint of that line exactly. And if I do the same thing along the bottom, you'll notice eventually I'll find it there as well. And so I can do that. Now you may ask, what good is this? Well, this gives me a nice center line to work with. So if I now hit the escape key, get out of that command, I can now use the symmetry constraint. And symmetry constraint is quite complicated. It's one of the most complicated we have. I hit the escape key, make sure nothing is pre-selected, and I can say symmetry. I would like you, dear computer, to make this line symmetrical to this line about this line. And these things will jump all over the place to make sure that these are actually symmetrical. Let me undo that again, and I will repeat the entire process so you can see it again. So, escape key, make sure nothing is selected. Symmetry. This line is symmetrical to this line about this line. And so now you have the symmetry symbols, and those are actually strange because they actually come in groups of 3. These 2 lines are symmetrical about that line. Escape. Now you'll notice that when I did this, everything moved around and you think, oh gosh, this is awful. Well, it's not awful. Just move things about as you need them to be. And if it starts getting all wonky on you like you just did there, just undo. Don't worry. It's nothing to freak out about. It's not behaving like I want it to at all. As a matter of fact, I'm not happy about that. But I'm getting it there. And it's just not doing this for me at all. As a matter of fact, it's so bad, I'm going to undo this whole thing, get back to what I liked, and I will do something else first. I'm going to hit the escape key, and I'm going to make these 2 equal. Make sure they cannot be different. So I'm going to make these equal. This one have to be equal. If they are then equal and symmetrical, escape key, symmetry, this line and this line are now symmetrical about this line. It's telling me it's having some difficulty doing this. It can't figure that out. But what I can do, and I can move things around to see how it's behaving, I can hit the escape key and I can actually say that these 2 should be perpendicular. And because this is the midline, the midpoint, and the midpoint, if I make these perpendicular and these 2 are equal, they are, by the rules of geometry that I learned in the 3rd grade, they should be symmetrical as well. So it's a bit dicey here. We're getting close. Let's go to create. Actually, you know what? This is horrible. This is not working out for me at all. Let's undo all this business. Let's tackle this a different way. I quite liked having that midline. I think that's quite good. I'm seeing something here that I got by accident. I didn't really want it. The parallel constraint that happened here, I don't want that one at all. So I got rid of it, clicked on it. Let's create a dimension. Let's actually dimension this out first. This looks to be about 110. What I do want to say is that this should be perpendicular to this, I think. Looks to be just about perpendicular, so let's do that. Escape, perpendicular between this and this. It's quite nice. So now we have that orientation. And I believe also it's quite important that these and this, they should be parallel to one another. So escape button and say parallel. So this and that should be parallel to one another. This can still move about in a funny way, but if I now go in and say symmetry between this, about that, I think I'll get closer to the behavior that I wanted before. Of course, you know, could be horribly wrong. It's not always easy being a CAD user. One thing I do see is that this and this have some sort of relationship to one another also. And so what I could do here is I could say dimension. Oh, I did that wrong. Create dimension, sketch dimension. This. Now, I could enter a value here, but I want to show you something about parametrics. If I go with my mouse over here you can see that this dimension here is called D4. That is its internal variable name, and it is 110 millimeters. If I click this, this means this will also be 110 millimeters. But I can easily use mathematical constructs like times 1.66 to make this 2/3 larger than the other. And this means if I do this, that the top and the bottom will be forever related through an equation. If I change this to 100, this becomes 166. If I change it back to 110, that is 182.60. This is just a very small bit of parametric design, and if you do this well, you can make very complex machines that will update through the change of a few key parameters. All right, I just want to open your eyes to that, nothing more. Now the other thing we can do here is define the overall height of this lampshade. And so I'm going to press the escape key, create sketch dimension from this top line to this bottom line here, and I'm going to place that sketch dimension. That doesn't look quite right to me. It needs to be a bit larger. Let's try 125-ish. That's not quite what I think it should be either. Let's double click it again and do 130. You know, even that's not really getting it. Let's do double click again, 135, and we'll see if we can get any closer than that. Eyeballing it is easier if it's in the right spot, so I'm going to hit the escape key and see if I can move things a little bit better now that everything has been sort of defined closer to what I want. And I can see, yeah, we're getting pretty close. Looks like it's pretty close. It's just not exactly what I wanted. There are some, it looks to be that those two sizes are a little bit off, but I'm going to live with it for now. Now, the other thing I can do is put another dimension, escape key, so that nothing's pre-selected, dimension. And I can do it from the top to this line here. And you can see here that I should see something like 50. And I don't really know what's left. There are a few blue things here. And I can see the only thing that I can't really define anymore is like how long this is. So let's do that and escape key again and then do the sketch dimension of this line here. And let's place that out and let's call that, let's just call that 110 as well. That may actually be a little bit much. Let's try 105. That looks pretty good. All right. Now, if you don't like where any of these things are, you can hit the escape key and you can start moving things around. That's not a problem. Just fine. But for now, everything is turned black, and even if it hasn't turned completely black, you're okay. There's one last thing we want to do, is this curve through here. We want to create a round in the sketch. So if I go in and look at my different commands, one of the ones I have somewhere in here, oh man, sometimes I miss. Let's, yeah, not create, of course, modify. We have a whole series of commands that modify existing geometry, and if I'm putting a round or a fillet on something, I'm not creating that. I'm modifying existing sketch items. So the fillet is here, and I can either select this and then that, or I can just go straight to the corner and hit that right there. I have an on-screen preview, and I can move it like that, and it looks to be like something around 20 is about right for that round in there. It's about what it looks like to be in real life, and so I get it there. Now it's going to give you a couple of errors or little warnings, and that has to do with the fact that we've got some restraints here, our dimensions, which are actually to that corner point, but that corner has now been removed. Don't worry about it. Fusion fixes that up for you, and it kind of runs out those extension lines here and actually fixes that for you. So it's not too much to worry about in that case. It just gives you a short-lived warning, and that's what you saw there. It also adds tangent controls to this line and the fillet, because of course a fillet should always be tangent to the items which it is filleting. So that's what those are right there. Now, we are almost done with our sketch. If we go to the fit, again, I only have the legs down here with which I need to continue sketching. And this is going to be super easy. I am going to do this using the simplest method possible. Create a line, and I will go from this point here, and I will go down and snap. I'm not going to click. I'm just going to move my mouse to the origin, to the 0 point, and I'm going to eyeball this here. Now the leg is actually short here because this was photographed, or it was rendered using orthographic view, which made this smaller. So I'm going to go straight down to the floor, and I'm going to make this leg out here with the imaginary floor, and I'm going to place that one leg there. Now you could go here and you could add angles and lengths and all that good stuff, but just to prove to you that you don't have to do it, I'm going to leave this. Now you're going to wonder, what about all these other legs? Do I have to sketch those as well? No, you do not. We will use this one to create one leg, and then we use some patterning techniques to create the other pattern, the 3D geometry. That's going to be the way we're going to do this, and it is a very efficient way of working and something you should do as well. Now, we are actually done with our sketch. So before I exit it and say finish sketch, I will go back into the chat and see how everyone is doing on this. See if any of you are still with me. Poor souls. 3 concurrent viewers. Tons of you out there. That's great. Please give me some feedback if you are doing okay. Now I told you we're going to take about an hour and a half to do this, and we're 10 minutes out. And most of you are thinking it is impossible, we will not finish on time. I think we will. I think we will. Because sketching is a very important part of what we do in 3D CAD. And it's also one of the first things that you've done in your basic course. So it's right that we spend a lot of time on it. And it is also right that it took a little time to do. But the things you learned here will help you in your next endeavors as well. So we'll be speeding up again. And even if you may not believe it yet, we're just about done with our lamp, or at least our concept lamp, to get a 3D shape which looks like a lamp, which we could take to our boss and say, this is what we'd like to make. Now, that is just a concept. It's a long way away from a finished lamp that we could actually manufacture, but it's a place to start. All right? So let's finish this sketch, and I will check that chat one more time to see if anybody's Superbot says he's doing great. That's great. I had not expected anything less from this gentleman. So we exit out of the sketch. If you missed that, I did it kind of quickly. We're in the sketch. We can just say finish sketch, or we can click here as well to say finish sketch. Doesn't really matter which you do. We're out of the sketch. The sketch is still visible. All the dimensions are gone. This is just a default setting in Fusion. That's fine. It assumes that you don't really want to see the dimensions anymore, because if you wanted to change them, if you want to make changes in those sketch dimensions, you would then edit the sketch by either right-clicking Edit Sketch or double-clicking on the sketch, and you'll be back in the sketch environment. You can make any changes you like, and they will then update. This is the principle of a parametric CAD system. So we're out of the sketching environment, and now we're going to begin creating 3D geometry. Now, you'll see our toolbar has now gone back to the 3D geometry creation tools. We do have a new folder called Sketches. It is here, and there is a sketch in there. You can also see that in my timeline, I have a canvas and I have a sketch. That's going to continue as we add things. You'll see new things pop up here and new things pop up down here. And we are going to start creating geometry. Now, there is an awful lot of different geometry sorts you could create. And I have, on purpose, picked one of the simplest to begin. There's a command, which is not typical for mechanical CAD systems. It's more typical for sort of design systems, called pipe. And we're going to use it to define this back arm here. That quite looks like a little piece of pipe or something that has been bent, and so we're going to use that to our advantage. There's a command here called pipe, and all it wants from me is a path. Now what I want you to do, and this is important, you should turn off chain selection so that it doesn't just automatically select everything in one line altogether. I want to turn that off, and I want to select this, then that. And I just want to select this. Now you'll see that I've done this in the past, so I have a value of something like 20 in here because that looks to be about right. If I look at the side, you can see that there's a place that I could make this pipe thicker, and I could actually move it along this path that I've defined. And there are actually some snap points in here. This path distance is a funny programmer-oriented definition. It goes from 0, which is all the way back here, that's 0, and it goes all the way to 1. This is programmer speak, from 0% to 100%. Why that is, you got me. So let's look at it from the right. And that's going to make it a little bit difficult to see this error right here. But if you kind of look at your canvas and kind of eyeball it, you can kind of get in there and zoom in there and check it out. Kind of eyeball it. And for me, I looked at it long enough and I decided I was like 18 or 20. I think it's more like 20 in my case. So I'm just going to say it's 20 is the thickness. And of course, I want the whole thing, so I'm going to pull it all the way down. It should be default all the way there, but if it's not, just make sure that distance is 1. You have the choice to use some other shapes, of course, instead of circles, or you can use squares or triangles, but all that's junk for now. We're just going to use circular, and you can even make that hollow, but let's ignore that now for now, even though later in the real model we would need a space for a cable to go through there. But let's ignore that. We're making a concept model, and don't forget it. There's also the concept down here of a new body. Later on that will be important. Of course we're having a new body because this will be our very first body. It is the very first 3D geometry that we've created. So as a result, we don't really have any other choices. Let's just say okay. And now we have created our first three-dimensional piece of geometry, and it is sitting there in space. And if you do not believe me, you can go to your home button. You can fit everything up, and then you can turn off the canvas, and you'll notice that your sketch has already automatically been turned off because the system assumes, Mickey just made some geometry using that sketch. He probably doesn't want that sketch anymore. The system is wrong, but here is your 3D geometry in space. Now, one of the first things we're going to do is go into that sketch folder, and I'm going to turn that sketch back on because indeed we're going to be using it for quite a lot of other things as well. This is a default setting in Fusion. You can turn it off so that it doesn't do this, but in general, when you use a sketch for the first time, it will turn its visibility off afterwards to try to unclutter your screen. We don't want that. We're going to open up the sketch folder right here, and we're going to turn the sketch back on. I'm going to look at it from the right, in case you've been spinning around and all this kind of stuff, and I'm going to fit this as well. So we're looking at it nice and clean. Now, you may or may not actually want to have these canvases active. At this point, I'm starting to feel like the canvas is actually a little bit of a hindrance to me, so I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn its visibility off, and I'm going to use the sketch, which is now visible, as my basis for work, right? Now, one of the things I'm going to do here is I would like to work on this lampshade. And this lampshade is a round piece of material. And as a result, I'm going to say create, and I'm going to use another command called Revolve. Now, if you go over each of these commands, you will get some cryptic little pictures that try to assume, that will try to tell you what this will actually do. Some of them are more helpful than others, that's true. But in the case of Revolve, it's not too bad. it can show you, it will take a profile or a shape, and it will revolve it around an axis. And this is one of the reasons why I created this central axis here, because now I can take this half or this half and I can revolve it around this central axis, and that will give me a round lampshade kind of shape. So let's do just that. Create, revolve. This shape profile is selected. I will need to select this to activate the axis command that I need. And then I can select this central axis. And it will then spin that and create a preview for me. Strangely, well, not strangely once you know why, it will tell you I am going to cut. And it does this because if you look very carefully at the side, you'll notice that my shape will actually cut a bit of this off. And the system assumes that if you already have something in this space, you must be wanting to trim it up. So this is why the system defaults to a cut in this particular case. But of course, I do not want to make a cut. I want to create a new body. So I'm going to do this, a new body. And by doing this, the preview changes, and this is my lamp shade. And I'm quite happy with it going all the way around, and I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to undo that and do it again so all of you can see it quite clearly. We're going to create a revolve. The system is asking me what profile I would like to revolve. I'm going to select this. And then it's going to ask me which axis would I like to revolve it around. Hence, it is so useful that I was able to draw this line here, and it will then revolve that. Because we're going to be trimming off this little bit of material here, the system assumes that's what I want to do, and it's going to tell me we're going to cut. But I don't want to cut. I want to create a new body. And as a result, when I say new body, you can see I have a new body being created here by the system, and I can then say OK. Unlike last time, when we did this, it does not turn off the sketch once you've turned it on explicitly again. So it's going to leave this active, and that's going to be handy for me because I'm going to use it for some other things. You'll notice also that when we created the pipe element, it created a folder called bodies, and there is a body in there that is the pipe. And because I said a new body, I have a second body, which is now the lamp shade. So you can have those two in there. And here again, just like all the others, I can turn those on and off as I so desire. Now, you'll notice that this lampshade is not very useful because I don't have any space inside to put a light bulb inside of it. And there are several ways I could have done this, and I'm going to show you one now. Let's turn the sketch off quickly, and I'm going to use a command under the modify to modify existing geometry called a shell. A shell will create a thin-walled structure of a thickness of which I define. And any faces which I select will be removed. So as a result, if I want to shell and I say I'm going to select this face will be removed, and I can give a thickness using either the on-screen preview or here in the dialog box. And in this particular case, I might make this thing, let's say, 4 millimeters thick. Now, okay. This is handy because now I have space to put a light bulb in and all the other stuff that I need. Let's undo that and let's show it to you again so you can follow along. The shell is no longer there. I've turned my sketch off. I'm going to the modify command, modify menu, and I'm going to use the shell command. The shell command will always remove those surfaces which I click on, and you can actually click on multiple surfaces. So I can click on these two surfaces, and I'll just show you what happens if I do this. and I'll pull a thickness out, and I might be able to say that. I would remove the top and the bottom. This may be just the sort of lampshade you would like to have. If you do not like what you selected, you can always go into the pop-up command, and you could actually get rid of that selection with a small x, and I could reselect only the one, and I can give a exact definition of 4 millimeters here on the inside. Now this is quite good. This is exactly sort of the lampshade I would like to have. But you will notice there is a small problem here, and this is this area right here where these don't actually line up at all. Huh? And it's actually sort of a problem here as well, that these are two separate bodies. I actually want to have these be together. So what do I do about that? Well, the first thing I can do is I can use, under the modify command, the command combine. And I can say combine. What would I like to combine? I would like to combine body 1 with body 2, and they would be joined. This makes both bodies joined together into one body. That's useful because later I want to actually 3D print this, and it's going to be all one piece. That may or may not be useful, but in this particular case, is what I'm going to do. Now, let's undo that again so you can see that process again. I want to make these two bodies under the body command one. So I'm going to modify, combine, and I'm going to use the target body is body 1, the pipe, and the tool body is body 2, the lampshade. And they are going to join one another. That should be creating one body. This will allow me to fix this little issue right here, right? Now you can zoom in here and do quite well, and you can think about, why did I get this artifact in the first place? And this is a problem. Things like this turn up in CAD all the time, and they shouldn't be here. Where did it come from? Let's look at that sketch again. If I double click the sketch, you'll see that my sketch goes up to there. And then I created my pipe, and that pipe went to this point here. But of course that pipe goes down to here, and it goes up to here. A solution to this would be to extend this line in to a certain extent, and then have it be inside this. And in some systems, you might have to do this. There are some other solutions where you could patch this up and fix it all up, but it's not really nice. Fusion has a little known feature, and we're quite slick about this. We can get in here really closely, and you can select that surface. Now I'm going to show you another little trick that's also hidden. It can be sometimes difficult to select these exact things that you want. So let's just get kind of close and zoom in to the general area, and I know back behind there there's a surface that I want, but I can't quite get it. My mouse skills aren't good enough. If you click and hold the left mouse button for 2 seconds, you will get a multi-select feature. And if you have this, then you can release your mouse once you have that, and you can easily cycle through. Is this the face you want? No, that's not it. Is that the face you want? Well, yes, indeed. It is the face. It's this one highlighted at the back. Even though I couldn't get it, I can still select it easily using the multi-select, and it will work with faces, points, reference geometry, lines, anything you want. So use it, and use it often. Now that that is selected, I can use another secret feature of Fusion, and you won't believe this when you see it. Since we're selected it, it's selected. All I have to do, and you can't see this, I'm going to hit the delete key. I deleted that face, and Fusion says, oh man, Mickey just deleted that face. What is he thinking? I'm going to heal this geometry. It's going to try to figure out how to put this geometry back together in a way that is that makes sense, that is contiguous and manifold. So it will often heal things like this just the way that you want it to them to do. It won't always work, especially when things start getting really wonky, but in a lot of cases it does work, and it's a nice little feature of Fusion to know. So you can do that all you want. And that is exactly what we wanted. It's much easier than any of the other methods that I could have thought of to fix that up. Now, we're just over time, and I want to keep going so we can really knock it out. Let's turn that sketch back on. And let's worry about this leg down here. This leg down here is just like one of these pipes right here. So let's do that again. Let's say create pipe. Pipe, pipe, pipe. There it is. And I'm not going to do the chain select, and this time I'm just going to use that one right there. Again, it's going to say cut because it's going to try to think that we're cutting down here. We don't want that. We want a new body. That's fine. Now, if we look at that canvas again, you'll notice we have 1, 2, 3, and then we have a fourth one over here. How do I get this one around? Well, that's pretty easy. Let's create a pattern, a circular pattern. By creating a circular pattern, I can pattern many different kinds of things: faces, bodies, features, components. In this particular case, I just created a body. So let's pattern the leg body. What body? This one. You could either select here or select there. There's no problem. And then you can select the axis about which it should be patterned. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is quite the reason why I put this 0 point so conveniently located right here under this thing. Now, how did I know to do that? Well, I've done this about 5,280 times. That's how I knew. But you will develop a sense of these sort of things when you start looking at geometries and imagining geometries and about how to build them. It does take practice. If I did not have an axis here about which I could easily pattern, then I would be stuck going into my sketches and creating geometry about which I could lay an axis, about which I could pattern. I would just have a few more steps that I would need to do in order to get the axis which I needed. So that's one of the reasons I put this there in the original placement of the canvas in the first place. So let's select that axis, and you'll see it'll ask you how many of these you want. And I've actually done this before, so it's going to remember that I wanted 3, but I could do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many I want. Now you can choose to turn singular ones off, but we don't actually want that. We just want 3. That's fine. The 3 that we have, you're asking, what about the fourth? Well, that fourth one isn't actually about that center axis at all. It's a different beast entirely. So we're going to handle that in a different way. If we say OK, now we have those legs there, and we're getting very close to what we need. Now let's handle this last leg here, and I'm going to show you something that's a little bit special about Fusion, right? Fusion will allow you to easily do things that you might know only in Windows systems. If you go here with the right mouse button on body 3, you should be able to say copy. And then you can go up to the document itself and say paste. This has actually pasted an additional body in here, and now I can take this, turn this around, move it up. I'm going to turn a little bit more using the gizmo and place it almost where I want it to be. Remember, this is a concept model. It does not need to be perfect. And so I'm using the canvas again to place this in the right place, and that looks quite nice. Now I'm going to undo all that again and just do it really quickly again so that you can see this. All right? Because it is important, and this is starting to get a little bit complicated. This looks nice. That's fine. Turn the canvas on. That's fine. That's where we were. So let's first take care of the pattern. Took care of the pattern of that one thing. Create a pattern, a circular pattern. What are we patterning? Bodies. Which body? This body. About which axis? Well, this central axis. By the way, if you cannot see this central axis, You might have turned it off at some point. It is no longer visible. Turn it back on using the eyeball. Click on this. Tell it you would like to have 3 examples of that, and then click OK. And you will have additional bodies in no time flat. To get this extra leg, and by the way, why is this extra leg here? When I built this lamp, I actually put my potentiometer to turn it on and off in that 4th leg. So this is how I actually turn the lamp on and off, and it has a dimmer in it. So I can twist this and it turns it on and off. So how do I do this? Let's click on the body 3, that is this body here. So you can click through your bodies until you find the one that's highlighted. You can right mouse button this and you can say copy. Go back to the top level here and click on this and then right mouse button that and then say paste. This will paste a second body, a copy of the first, in the exact same location at that place, and you will have the move copy command here. And the easiest thing I find to do is use the gizmo to twist this thing around, use the arrows or the plane movement key to get it just about where you want it to be. And remember, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And get this somewhere like that. And this is our concept model. It's just a concept model. Don't freak out about exact placements. And because it was created on that second middle plane and we haven't moved it out of that plane, it should be exactly in the middle, and then we can hit OK. And to prove it to you, we can look at it from the side, and it does look to be in about the same place, right? Now, I do need to speed up a bit for the last little bit, and so I'm going to keep going. And if you didn't get this quite, you can look at the recording later and you can figure it out, I'm sure. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that if I look at the canvas, let's turn all the bodies off and look at that canvas again. The thing is the canvas has a nice picture here of some wooden legs. And of course, I don't have wooden legs here. I just have singular pieces, and they have to be actually different textures and colors later. So let's turn those sketches off, turn the bodies back on. And the thing is, I would like to split these, and I also want to round them. Now, the thing is, you could go in here, you could split this into a separate surface here, and split that one into a separate surface, and that one into a separate surface, and that one into a separate surface. It's quite a lot of work. And then you can do around there, around there, around there, and around there. It's also quite a lot of work. And I want to show you something about this thing down at the bottom, the timeline, which we've referred to a number of times but haven't really done all that much with yet. You can see that the timeline shows all of the same things that we created. It shows all of our commands here, but this is unique because it shows them in the order in which they were created. And I don't know if you noticed this, but you can grab this here and you can move the timeline back. And you can, in effect, move back through time. And you can see the first thing I did was created a canvas. And then after that, I created a sketch. And then after that, we created the pipe. And then so on and so forth until we got to the end. Now, I've noticed I would like actually to split this body. And I would actually like to have it rounded. And I would like to do that on all of these. But if I had been smarter, I would have done that first, and then I would have patterned, and then I would have copied and pasted. But I wasn't smart. But that's okay. Fusion allows me to do that anyway. If I go to my timeline, I can simply go back to the time where I just had created this one leg here. All this stuff still exists. It's just not being calculated at the moment. I am moving back in time. And so now I can make use of this. Let's go first and split this. So one way I could split this is by using some entity to split this surface right here where this wooden leg is, right about there. And there are a number of ways to do this, but the way I'm going to show you right now is by using a construction plane, because it's nice to know about construction elements and how they work. That's why we're going to do it here. Now there are a number of ways you can do construction planes, but these are imaginary planes which you can sketch on, you can measure from, you can do all sorts of things from, and one of them is the offset plane. So let's take that one. And I'm going to offset from this nice flat plane at the end of my leg, and it's going to ask me, what's the offset on that? And here again, I'm going to eyeball this, and I'm going to get right about there. Now I could do this exactly if I wanted to measure it all out, but here again, this is a concept model, so I'm going to put it at about the area where the wooden leg ends. I'm going to just push it there, and I'm going to say OK. This construction plane is now there. It's quite handy. I also have a construction plane folder, and you can see it here. It is a three-dimensional object, or it's a two-dimensional plane in three-dimensional space. That's the right way to say it, yes. But this is quite handy for me because now I can say modify, and I can modify by not splitting the body. That's important. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to split the face. We're going to split a face, and what face are we going to split? We're going to split this face. Just split that face into two separate faces, and what are we going to split it with? We're going to split it with that construction geometry. And when I do, bam, you can get this, I can turn off the construction geometry. I don't have to see that anymore. And now you can see I actually have two surfaces. These two surfaces belong to the same body. And that's important that they do, because we do have the command split body and split face. If I had split body, however, we would have a problem. And this has to do with parent-child relationships. Parent-child relationships are having to do with the timeline. Do you remember we created the body here by using the pipe command? And then right after this, I created a pattern. And what did I pattern? I patterned bodies. Now if I patterned this body, and then subsequently I made a change and I split this body into two separate bodies, that would mean that this pattern here would no longer understand which of these two bodies it is supposed to actually pattern. So that's one of the reasons I decided to split the face, only the face, and not the body. So this is only a split of this surface and not of the body itself. But that's all we need because I can put textures on this. I can make this look like wood and this make this look like black plastic, and we should be fine. Now in the same way, I want to round this edge. And so here I'm going to do modify, fillet. This is a three-dimensional fillet that is not in the sketch. This is on three-dimensional geometry. And so I can just select that edge, and just like so many things in Fusion, I can eyeball this and go all the way down. Now, it will actually give you an error. And what is it going to give you an error at? Once I get to 10 millimeters, I have completely used up that bottom surface. It is not there anymore. If I go over that limit, it will actually tell me there's an error. It will not really know what to do. So that's what that's about. Now, 10 millimeters is just fine for me. That gives me a nice, completely rounded surface, quite nice. I can do that. I'm happy with that. And now watch what happens when I go back and do that pattern. That pattern will update the split faces on each of those additional legs, plus the copy and paste and the move that went along with it. That puts all those things just like I wanted. As the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, just for the purpose of making this all nice and tidy, I am going to combine, and I'm combining the first body with all the other bodies. And I'm going to join them into a single body. This is because this is just a concept. I'm going to turn my canvas off. I'm going to turn my sketches off, and I'm also going to turn my origin off. And you can see right here, we've got a nice concept of a lamp. All right? Now, the last thing I want to show you is to go into the rendering environment. Not that this is entirely necessary, but as long as we're here, we can do some nice things in the rendering environment that is in Fusion. Let's go back into the design environment to show you this, because an amazing number of people do not know that if you click here, you have a whole series of different environments, and one of them is the rendering environment. And the rendering environment is, first of all, really, really scary because the toolbars completely changed, the colors and the view of everything changes, but this is creating a rendering environment. So as a result, you always have perspective views, you have actual some limited rendering of shadows and lighting, and your materials look a little better. This is as intended. And we can basically work from left to right over the crop of this and change our appearances of our materials. And so we can go in here and we can search in the library and say, let's make plastic, if you so wish. And I am going to make ABS glossy black plastic, and I'm going to pull it, drag and drop onto this. And you'll see that this now is plastic glossy black. The appearance changes a bit. And if I go in and say wood, whoop, shouldn't hit the enter key. Wood. You'll see I have a whole series of wood sorts available. You'll see that most of these appear, I have to download them. They are not located on my local machine. The good news is that I can use one of the ones that's already there. Usually if you download, it doesn't take very long at all. It takes maybe a couple of seconds depending on your thing, but I'm going to take a mahogany, and this time I'm going to apply this only to the faces. And I'm going to put a nice mahogany. Let's actually do a bamboo light because it just shows up really well. So let's do this. We'll do it there. And we do need to get all these surfaces as well. There is actually a better way to do this, but I'm not all that super talented with my mouse, even though I work here. So I'll just do it this way. And we're just doing faces. And you can do a lot here. This is just very basic stuff. You can change some of these textures. You can add your own materials if you so like. That's just fine. And to make this look really nice, let's look for some luminescence. And I always use the abbreviation LM for lumens. There are actually materials in here which emit light. And so if we have a very small LED lamp, I can put it on a face and I can fake a light bulb in this thing by taking an LED and just putting it on that back lamp. And if you've ever looked at lamps, you'll notice also that they are painted white on the inside, and that makes, oh, I shouldn't have done that again. I press the enter key and it disappears. I want to have that inner surface be white because it makes a difference in how it looks. We can even do fabric white, and I'm going to do it on face, and let's do fabric white. Right? See if that looks nice. We'll check it out. Maybe ABS white might be a little bit better, but we'll see. We can compare. So if we set this up like we might want this thing to look in a photo booth, something like this might be fine. Let's get rid of the rendering gallery. Don't really need that. We can also close this at this point. And there's a number of different settings that we can do, but the easiest thing we can do is an in-canvas render at this point. And it will render on my local machine, so my poor little computer will start rendering and rendering away. And you can see it is calculating in an iterative fashion the light, how it creates shadows, and it starts out being quite fuzzy. And as time goes by and the iterations continue, your picture gets better and better and better and better and better. And of course, the more effort you spend on your rendering, the better your rendering results will be. And you can take it from me, these rendering results can be very, very good indeed, with a little bit of skill and a little bit of effort. Now, this looks really great, and you might say, wow, Mickey, I couldn't believe after 2 hours that I would be able to do something like this for the first time ever. But we're just not done. Let's hit the render stop. Let's go back into the design world, and let's imagine we're in a real design office. So we might want to do some different options. So if I go to this body and I say copy, paste, right? And I'm just going to move that new variation there. I'm going to say paste again. I'm going to move a new variation there. Let's go back into the rendering environment. Look at that sort of from the same angle. And this time, I'm going to talk to my boss about what lamp we should be making. And I might want to tell him that, that black plastic, it just ain't really a thing. Let's do it with glossy red. Let's do it with glossy green. Keep the appearances to the faces, otherwise you'll lose those. There's wood in those. And by the way, that painting that inside with fabric white is not nearly as awesome as making the inside edge of that, I'm not doing well, gold. Now it could be polished gold or it might just be painted gold. And in this particular case, I'll say gold polished. Let's get it in there and make it gold polished on that inner face. And watch what this does to the light when we actually show it. Let's do that in Canvas Render. And you can see it makes a much different light. It makes it much warmer, makes it much more friendly. And I know this because we have a lamp in our bathroom that was painted in this fashion. I was impressed by what a difference it made in how that lamp worked in the room. Now this is what you do with Fusion in real life product design companies. They come up with variations and variants of this lamp, and they decide based on this. If they decide that this lamp is almost right, but not quite what they wanted, they can go back into the design world, and you can easily edit this sketch and make this 300 high. You could make this 145 high. You could make this lamp skinnier and make it 80 across. And you might even be able to put this up to 80 degrees. So we've made some significant changes to this lamp, and by doing this parametrically, they all update, and we can go back into our rendering environment and see how they would look. In general, we might actually do this with variants of the lamp over and over again. So that was a lot of information for today, and I'm not exactly sure if it's really, really good to use a live stream format to try to do one-on-one training. But if you did like this, please give me your feedback. I can do many more of these, and you'll be also happy to know that most of my material is also available on my YouTube channel in short 5-minute videos, and there are others in there that are actually 60-second videos that can jog your recognition on a few key themes inside of Fusion. I do hope this was useful and entertaining for you today, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.